welcome back to the Bundesliga Show, brought to you by Over the Bar, with your hosts, myself, Rory Petre, and Mark Broadhurst in Germany. Three games to go now in the Bundesliga season. We've just seen Matchday 31 just go past over this weekend. As very entertaining games, some shock results, and lots of good goals as well. So me and Mark have got plenty to get our teeth stuck into. Just before we crack on then, and we'll go over to Mark for his anagram, the return of the anagram. Just obviously, if you're new to the channel and you kind of like what you see, you like German football, if you just want to learn a little bit more about the Bundesliga, smash the subscribe button. I'll try and say that again, actually, subscribe. Press the red button just below, hit the bell icon, and then, you won't miss out on the show. We're here every week, of course, when there are games to be watched. Unfortunately, we were due to have a guest today, but unfortunately, technological difficulties have stopped us. So, unfortunately, due to technological difficulties, not the case this weekend. So stuck with me and Mark for yet another weekend. We'll go over to Mark then for a bit of anagram fun.
Absolutely. So let's start by, obviously we didn't have an anagram on the Thursday night special when we did the week 30 prediction. So let's go back to the week 29 review show, when, as you hopefully remember, for the regulars especially, our anagram was Sabra soon. I really wanted to test you guys with this one. It was a very, very difficult one, and unfortunately nobody got it correct this week. So obviously the answer is actually the Stuttgart's excellent Croatian midfielder BORNA SOSA, who didn't actually play this weekend, but obviously he's been a shining light for Stuttgart this season. But nobody got it right this week. But let's hope this week will bring you a little bit more luck. So let's have a look this week. So this week's week 31 review anagram is indeed BONSAI FLAK. So if you're listening at home, that's BONSAI, BONSAI, FLAK, FLAK. So remember, all of our anagrams here at the Bundesliga Show are always related to the top tier only of the Bundesliga. It has to be a player, a manager / head coach, or a club related to the top tier of the Bundesliga. So enjoy, have some fun, and tell your friends about it. And don't forget to leave a comment for your predicted answer as well. So while we finish the anagram, let's move on to the correct score, the final result. So obviously we're getting very, very close to the end of the Bundesliga season. Most teams have played 31 games, but as I say, as a precursor to the results, Schalke's game against Hertha Berlin has once again been cancelled for the third time in a row that Hertha Berlin's fixtures have been cancelled due to that corona pandemic. They're next scheduled to play a game on the 7th of May against Hoffenheim, and they'll have to play 6 games in the final 2.5 weeks of the season. So let's see how that goes. So let's start by recapping the results. So on Friday night, we had a classic relegation dogfight, and it ended in a 3-2 win for FC Cologne away from home in Augsburg. Then moving on to Saturday, we had a 1-1 draw between Freiburg and Hoffenheim in the Baden-Württemberg derby. We had a brilliant 2-1 win for Mainz against Bayern Munich. The title race lives on into week 32. Union Berlin with another easy-peasy win, 3-1 at home to faltering Werder Bremen. Then in the big top 4 game, it went with the favourites, Dortmund getting a 2-0 win in Wolfsburg. Then another top 4 game in the evening on Saturday ended in an excellent 3-1 win for Leverkusen over, well, we can probably say faltering now, Frankfurt. Then moving on to Sunday, we had a very, very comfortable 2-0 win for Leipzig against Stuttgart, which meant that the title race will continue for another week. And then we had a 5-0 win for Gladbach against Bielefeld in the Nordrhein-Westfalen derby. So obviously only 8 games, as we previously mentioned. Berlin versus Schalke was cancelled. So let's have a look. Let's move swiftly on to our OTB's featured 4 now. So, I mean, again, this stage of the season, there's always tons of massive games. It was difficult, again, to choose a top 4, but I think we got 4 excellent games this weekend. So let's move to the first of the games, which was Leverkusen 3, Frankfurt 1. So, I mean, this was the game. It was billed as a massive game. It was 6 versus 4, wasn't it? I mean, we did talk a lot about Frankfurt starting to falter a little bit. The 2 performances since Adi Hütter announced his move to Gladbach hadn't been too impressive, although they did get the win over Augsburg on Tuesday night. But this time it wasn't to be. I mean, for me, Leverkusen were fantastic in this game. We know that Leverkusen are a team that blow hot and cold. The first half, despite finishing goalless, it was just chance after chance after chance for Leverkusen. I mean, for me, Trapp made 2 amazing saves in there as well. He made 2 absolutely marvellous saves, and that kept it at goalless. But then in the second half, Rory, Leverkusen really asserted their dominance into goals, didn't they?
Well, they did, yeah. Obviously, all the goals came in the last 20 minutes or so. So, yeah, we saw the first goal for Leverkusen on 70 minutes. A really nice ball in from Diaby, who had come on as a sub, and the finish from Bailey is a really clever / cute finish. He manages to get such a narrow angle underneath Trapp's feet to then just kind of trickle over the line at a really kind of tight / narrow angle. So yeah, so that's 1-0, and it's completely it was a completely deserved lead. Then the game did naturally start to break up a little bit more, opened up. Frankfurt obviously probably thinking that realistically we need to win, so they started to push up quite a lot, and that's ultimately where the second goal came from. So Leverkusen won the ball back in their half, and then quickly broke. Alario covering a lot of distance, played a nice 1-2 with Bailey, who then obviously became the provider this time, and it was a really nice finish actually from Alario, a chipped finish over Trapp for 2-0, and you think that's probably that, because there's not much time left. But lo and behold, obviously, Mr. Andre Silva was trying to drag his team back into it. So yeah, a textbook Silva header, heading the ball back from where it came from, which obviously you're always taught to do as a striker. So yeah, textbook finish from him, but wasn't quite enough because only 50 seconds later from kickoff, Demirbay manages to get a deflected long-range hit to nestle in the back of the net. So 3-1. But yeah, it was a well-deserved victory for Leverkusen. Like you say, they do blow hot and cold. We've seen the very best of them this season and the very worst. But yeah, an important win for them because they'll obviously be well aware of the form of Gladbach and Union behind them in terms of the race for the top 6. Obviously, we can kind of discount all of Leverkusen, Gladbach and Union away from that top 4 berth, but they'll just be wanting to concentrate on ensuring they've got European football for next season, because obviously just financially it's an important thing for the club. But yeah, Frankfurt are faltering a little bit, and they're feeling the pressure. We kind of obviously know that it's going to be 2 teams from 3, either Wolfsburg or Frankfurt, now looking a little bit dodgy. It might be one of those 2 teams that misses out for Dortmund, because they're coming hot on their coattails at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's a good point that you mentioned about Leverkusen. Yeah, you mentioned that they probably are out of the top 4 race, but I just want to say, are they 100% out of it? Because they're currently 6 points adrift with 3 games to go. So you're thinking, yeah, it's absolutely over. But if you look at some of the fixtures to come, I mean, Leverkusen, they still have to play Dortmund. Yeah. Dortmund still have to play Leipzig. So, I mean, Dortmund have got hard fixtures, you know. I mean, if they lose 2 of those games, then they're well and truly out of the contention, you know. Obviously, Wolfsburg, we've seen they've started to falter a lot recently. Can you classify them as definitely in there? Probably not at the moment. I think both Frankfurt and Wolfsburg have both got to play Mainz as well. Yeah. I mean, Mainz now, they're not your typical 12th place side, are they? I mean, as we'll talk about in a minute, they're playing more like a top 6 side at the minute, Mainz. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes as well. But I think, yeah, I wouldn't 100%. Okay, I wouldn't 200% count Leverkusen out yet, because I mean, like, if they win all 3 games, it isn't out of the question that they could actually sneak in there if other teams continue to falter. So that's going to be interesting. But yeah, As for Frankfurt, they just need to badly. They've got Mainz at home, Schalke away, Freiburg at home. Their last 3 games. I mean, on paper, you're thinking that's a great run-in, but when you're not on form, it doesn't always work out like that, does it? But I mean, they should be able to get 3 wins from those games at the end of the day. You know, they should be able to do it, or at least 7 points, which I think will probably still be enough. I mean, if they get less than that, they probably don't deserve top 4. Let's be honest, after how comfortable they were at one stage. But yeah, poor performance from Frankfurt. Obviously, Andre Silva's 26th goal of the season. He could easily hit 30, to be honest with you, looking at the final fixtures. And it's just been an amazing season for him, for Frankfurt as well. But let's just hope that they can hold the nerve and get that top 4 finish, because I personally would like to see Frankfurt as a city in the Champions League, because it's a great city, it's a great club, and let's just hope they can get there, really. Okay, so moving on to the next game, which was the shock of the weekend. I mean, it's always a shock when Bayern lose, isn't it? But I mean, considering that Bo Svensson, now the 3rd Mainz official coach of the season, he took over for the first game on week 15. He's now taken 28 points in his last 16 games. I mean, Rory, I think we talked about it before. I just want to touch on this. How far is Bo Svensson off manager of the season this year?
I mean, the rise out of trouble and relegation for Mainz has been quite spectacular, to be fair. Obviously, it was only a matter of months ago where we'd considered them to be almost gone. How wrong we were. It's been a brilliant turnaround. The amount of points that they've accumulated in a short space of time has been incredibly impressive. So the fact that obviously the managers come in and been able to turn their fortunes around has been very impressive. So yeah, I mean, he could certainly be a contender, could sneak in there come the end of the season for sure. But yeah, it was obviously a very tidy and polished finish display. From Mainz, other than a very early Benjamin Pavard effort from Bayern, it was a first half that was very much controlled by Mainz, I would say. Obviously, the first goal that we see is from Burkhardt, who hits a powerful and a bit of he gets a bit of swerve on the ball, a bit of dip, and it seems to catch Neuer out or catch him by surprise, and he just kind of punches it into the net. So I guess you can call that an error. I don't know if the ball moved enough. It was hit hard, and maybe you didn't see it clearly, but obviously that puts them 1-0 up, and then they were creating chances. By will. Quaison was looking really dangerous before he actually scored anyway. That was a really nice delivery for him to get the header from close range to make it 2-0. And we didn't really see an awful lot from Bayern. Obviously, with the returning Lewandowski as well. It was a fairly controlled performance in the second half. Choupo-Moting came on and probably one of the most dangerous players on the pitch. To be fair to him, his renaissance is continuing, so to speak. Obviously, he didn't bag any goals, and Bayern's goal only comes from a very questionable bit of defending from Mainz right at the end from Hack, I think it is. Yeah. I think he's trying to header the ball backwards into the keeper's arm so he can just obviously catch it and play on. But it was such an awkward kind of movement to do. You just think, just play it forward with your head rather than creating this mess that ensued, because obviously Lewandowski then pounces on the free ball and kind of flicks it into the net to make it a slightly cagey finish. I think it was pretty much the last kick of the ball of the game. But yeah, obviously no title party this weekend for Bayern. So they'll have to wait another weekend by the looks of it. But I mean, Mainz are absolutely flying. So well done to Mainz. It looks like they've secured some Bundesliga football for themselves for next season.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously another point on Lewandowski. That's now 36 goals for the season. His target is to beat the record set by Gerd Müller in the 60s. He needs 4 more goals to equal it and 5 to beat it. Obviously, Gerd Muller's record, Bundesliga record, stands at 40 goals. I think, I mean, obviously, he's still going to have a great chance of doing it. You know, with his goal scoring rate, you wouldn't bet against him getting 5 goals in the last 3 games, really. But obviously, yeah, I think from Mainz's perspective, if there's ever a time to make a terrible error like hacks, it's in the 94th minute when only 5 minutes have been added on, really. You know, so they only had about another 60 seconds, really, to kind of hang out, if that, really, to be honest with you. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, Mainz, they did take a 2-0 lead in the Allianz Arena, I think back in, was it December or January, the reverse fixture? But they lost 5-2 that game. But obviously, they've learned from the mistake. I think that was one of Svensson's first games, actually. And already at that point, you were starting to realise that he was, especially attacking-wise, he was starting to get a lot more out of them, you know. But nowadays, Mainz are a resolute side as well as a good attacking side. I mean, we saw them against Werder Bremen midweek. They stood up to win that game, which set them up nicely for this game, which was a free hit, really. And I just thought it was a brilliant performance, not only going forward, but also how resolute they were as well. I mean, they would have had the memories of being 2-0 up at half-time, the last fixture against Bayern, and obviously they got battered in the end. But, I mean, to do it so comfortably, it just proves how much that side have matured under Svensson. And to be honest with you, I think a few weeks, maybe early in the season, Rory, I remember saying to you, and I think we had a guest on at the time, I said, Mainz need to find a new Jurgen Klopp or Thomas Tuchel, who both managed Mainz earlier in their careers. And maybe we found it with Bo Svensson, you know. Okay, it's a little bit early to say that, but I mean, my God, has he done well with them, really.
Yeah.
Like, he's turned them into a really, really good side, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them go and turn Frankfurt over next week either, to be honest with you. That's how much faith I have in them at the minute. But yeah, well played, Mainz. It's not often that Bayern loses. It's only the 4th league defeat of the season, the 9th time they failed to win. But well done, Mainz. Fully deserved safety in the Bundesliga. Although it's not mathematically confirmed, I think it'd take a miracle for them to go down now, to be honest with you. Okay, so talking of teams going down, there's no better place than the 6-point. Well, we say it was a 6-pointer. I would say it was a must-win for Cologne, and they managed to get that win, didn't they? With a brilliant, really entertaining Friday night 3-2 win in Bavaria against Augsburg. I mean, obviously, the big talking point of this game, it was very, very much a game of 2 halves, wasn't it? I mean, Cologne in the first half just absolutely destroyed Augsburg, really. Obviously, going in at 3-0 up, a double from Andre Duda, who for me at times hasn't been that good. He was the marquee signing in summer, but he really came good in this game. And for me, the other goal coming from an assist from, in my opinion, one of the most improved players of the last few weeks is Marius Wolf, to be honest, because I think he was another of their kind of big hitters, and for me, he wasn't doing enough earlier in the season. But obviously, he's come good the last couple of weeks, Rory, and I think this is a massive win for Cologne, personally.
Yeah, absolutely huge. Yeah, a game of 2 halves for sure. Cologne were playing some absolute exhibition football at times in that first half. Absolutely controlling it, making Augsburg look completely ordinary. But yeah, Duda has come good in the last 3 to 5 games, I'd say. He's been looking much more like the player that Cologne had wanted to sign in the first place. I mean, the first goal is special. It's an absolute wonder hit with his weaker foot as well. I mean, I was saying this to a couple of my football friends the other day, actually, like, have you seen this goal? Like, Duda scored with his wrong foot. I couldn't even make connection with my weaker foot at that sort of an angle. So fair play to him. That cleaned hit off his left foot on the volley into the top. Well, not quite the top corner, but it was just high in the right place. So, yeah, wonderful bit of skill and technique. So if you haven't seen that goal, I highly recommend that you go search it out on YouTube or on the web somewhere. It's an incredibly clean hit. And yeah, as you mentioned, some good play from Wolf to do a dummy. To allow Kynes to arrive to stroke home to make it 2-0, and then Duda did pretty much the exact kind of copy of that second goal to make it 3 before half time. And you just kind of thought it'd be a not a walk in the park for the second half, but you just anticipate that they'd be able to manage the game, maybe concede 1 goal. But Augsburg had other ideas, so obviously they made it 3-1. and then very shortly after that made it 3-2 with about half an hour still to go. After Vargas got on the end of the cross, there was a few bits of questionable defending, I think, even for the first goal as well, really. But yeah, it was an incredibly important result to hold on to. It gives them fantastic opportunity now and a chance to also survive. So, I mean, if we were doing predictions right now about who's going down, I honestly couldn't call it. It is really hard. Amazing that all these teams just pick up these kind of performances and kind of runs of form when it really matters, obviously. You know, it kind of makes you question what they do for the rest of the season, doesn't it, if they're capable of putting in these performances. But yeah, hugely important win for Cologne. Again, slightly worrying for Augsburg that they're again being kind of dragged into the conversation. They are obviously 3 points clear of Werder in 13th. So you imagine they're probably going to be okay anyway. But yeah, I mean, with Hertha now sitting comfortably in that 17th spot, all the teams above them can do is just keep on picking up results and making them sweat on it. So yeah, incredibly impressive result for Cologne. And, you know, who's to say that they don't win the, you know, 2 of their last 3 or 3 out of their last 3?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fixtures are quite nice as well. They've still got to play Schalke at home on the last day, which could be crucial. You know, I mean, if you'd want to pick one fixture to have on the last day of the season, if you need a point or a win, it would be Schalke at home. I mean, that is a really good, and they've also got to play Freiburg at home as well. So, I mean, obviously Freiburg are a very good side, but they are a classic mid-table team at the moment. And I think, judging by the performance this weekend, which wasn't one of their better ones, it could be on the proverbial beach, as they say. Do you know what I mean? So that could be another game that they target. Realistically, I think another, as you say, 4-6 points is all they'll need to even avoid the relegation playoff as well. So, I mean, they've got a chance. I mean, obviously, Funkel has been massive in the turnaround as well. Friedheim Funkel, former Dusseldorf coach. I mean, he's a controversial character. Let's just say that much. You know, he's a little bit old school, some might say. Like I think he made some controversial comments after his first game against Leverkusen as well, which obviously that result didn't go his way. But I mean, the 2 performances since then have been outstanding, really. And they look a side now that are in the mood to stay up for probably the first time this season for me. They've drifted through probably, I don't know, 29 games of the season. They've had the odd good performance, you know, don't get me wrong. They've not been terrible the whole season, but, I mean, they're saving the best now for Funkel's last few games. I mean, he's probably got himself a nice bonus if he keeps them up as well. So, I mean, he's clearly motivated. Yeah. And, yeah, I mean, it's going well for Cologne now. I think as things stand, you probably fancy them to avoid that bottom 3 because, as I say, Schalke, you've got to say that's another 3 points. Then win one of your other 2 games, which potentially Freiburg at home, and that would take them to 35 points. And I think that would be enough to avoid the relegation playoff. Although much depends on how Hertha Berlin come on when they get back from the quarantine. Like, they could hit the ground running and go and win 3 games in a row. You just don't know. Whereas at the same time, they could go and lose 3 games in a row. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. And I think much really depends on that. But I think if Hertha Berlin hit the straps when they come back from the quarantine, a lot of teams are going to be very worried. As you say, the likes of Werder Bremen, who are now desperately teetering on a brink, aren't they, really, at the minute? And obviously also another side, potentially Augsburg, can't be 100% out of it. I mean, if you look at their form, Augsburg, I mean, I would say until the last 4 games, they're having a brilliant season, really. I mean, then they lost to Schalke, didn't they? Only the second side to lose to Schalke. Then they drew at home to Bielefeld, which at the time looked a decent result, but after what's happened since, it doesn't look like such a good point anymore. Then, obviously, this result today, I mean, they've taken 1 point from games against Schalke, Bielefeld and Cologne. I mean, that's not great, really. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be worried about their form going into these last 3 games. They might still need another 1 or 2 points to guarantee safety this year, but I still think they'll do it. I really do. But worrying times for Heiko Herrlich and Augsburg. So let's move on to the last game, which is back up to the top 4 race, it was billed as our big match of the week. It probably wasn't the most entertaining match of the week, but it certainly wasn't a dull game. And it ended in a 2-0 win for on fire now, I would say, Borussia Dortmund. who are just sensing blood, aren't they, Rory? I mean, they look a side now who are going to get in that top four, don't they?
They do, yeah. Their form has been much improved. Haaland have obviously played a key role in that. The fact that they've got Sancho back now is important for them. What I will say is from this game is that Wolfsburg created their own problems. So first and foremost, there's a great chance for Octavio very early on in the game, like well inside the Dortmund area with pretty much free reign to have a hit, and completely drags it wide, almost out for a throw, and it was that bad. But yeah, after that, obviously, so it's a bad back pass attempted by Baku, which kind of leads to an error. That it goes beyond Brooks, and then obviously Haaland has the pace on Brooks, and he latches onto it to go through and score and make it 1-0. And then Baku himself did have a chance. He managed to hit the side netting with an effort. And Weghorst again straight after the halftime whistle had gone. He had a chance where he flashed it over the bar. And then obviously the Wolfsburg are trying to come back into the game, and then they're helped by Dortmund on this occasion with a bit of an unfortunate / rash bit of play from Jude Bellingham. Obviously, he was on a yellow card and he got kind of suckered into making a challenge they didn't need to make. So obviously he's a young lad and he's going to make mistakes, isn't he, every so often. His form has been incredible, actually, the last month or two. I saw a tweet from him, actually, and he came out and said, I apologise to the fans for putting my team in jeopardy. So he clearly understands what he did, and obviously all players can make a mistake. But in the context of the game, it did put his side under pressure, obviously, until Haaland managed to break away and pretty much run the length of the Wolfsburg half to then coolly slot home to make it 2-0, which effectively obviously killed the game, even with a man advantage. I think Schlager and Baku had kind of wild / hopeful shots near the end, but that was that. So yeah, it was a game of impressive control and defence from Dortmund, I guess. And yeah, I guess a few what ifs really for Wolfsburg in that game. Having a man advantage for half an hour, a good few chances spurned, one definite error for one of the goals. So yeah, it was an interesting game to watch. But maybe that's just the pressure of those who are in possession, who maybe aren't used to being in that position for Wolfsburg. Obviously, they're a team that have played in the Champions League and been in Europe plenty of times before, but the expectation is on Dortmund, so they're probably used to that pressure. So obviously they're the chasing ones, but Wolfsburg look like a side that were kind of holding on more than playing their natural game. So yeah, it's very, very close now. So I assume this top four race will go down to the last weekend. So it will get more and more exciting each match day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we always knew that Wolfsburg had this really, really tough run-in. You know, I mean, obviously they went Frankfurt, Bayern, then Stuttgart, now Dortmund. They've still got to play Leipzig. They've got to play on-form Mainz as well. So, I mean, we always knew that this was going to be a really tough run-in. And I think the performances haven't been terrible in any of the three games they've lost. You know, I mean, obviously they lost 4-3 to Frankfurt in one of those crazy games, which could have ended up 5-5, to be honest. Then even the Bayern one, you know, they missed chances to equalise. And then even today, this probably wasn't a performance that will live long in the Wolfsburg memory, but they had chances. You know, as you say, if Octavio takes that chance early on, it's a different game. And then Dortmund are pushing, and they know that even a draw is not good enough really for Dortmund in this game, but they got the result that they needed. I think while I wouldn't say that Terzic's time has been vintage by any means, I mean, they've lost way too many games. They've had some appalling results on the way, but he does seem to have matured as a coach now, you know, and he seems like a proper manager on the touchline now. I mean, this was probably their most mature performance of the season in many ways, I would say. And it has been gradually getting better and better, probably over the last 2 months, really, hasn't it? I mean, it's obviously the performances against Man City were very, very honourable, I thought, despite the fact they lost it. If it wasn't for that slightly soft penalty. And probably Emre Can really cost them that tie, let's be honest. He made 2 mistakes in key moments. And I mean, that kind of sums up Dortmund in some ways, doesn't it? They do make a lot of errors which lead to goals. But I think, yeah, I mean, if they win the cup, obviously they play Holstein Kiel in the semi-final of the cup next weekend. And if they win the cup, they'll probably have to beat Leipzig in the final, admittedly, which would be an interesting final, by the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if they get top 4 and win the cup, then they've not had a bad season for me, you know, and they've been leaving Marco Rosa in a relatively decent position, albeit not perfect position. Because I would still imagine Haaland and potentially Sancho will push for moves in summer regardless. Although that remains to be seen. Anything can happen on that front. Okay, so over to the other 4 games. Now let's just review the other 4 games. So yeah, probably the most important of those games was it was the 2-0 win for Leipzig over Stuttgart, wasn't it? I mean, we knew going into the Sunday that Leipzig, a draw would mathematically keep it open, but we knew that given Bayern's superior goal difference, that really Leipzig needed the 3 points in this game to take it to the next match day, and they got it very, very comfortably. But I think, Rory, the key point in this was the early sending off for the young 19-year-old, wasn't it?
That it was, yeah. I can't say I've seen an awful lot of him. Amada, I believe he's called, a French youngster, 19 years of age. Obviously sent off for a high foot over the ball on Haidara, which did go to a VAR check. So, yeah, I mean, that was after 13 minutes, or certainly before the 20-minute mark, I think. So I think Stuttgart did well to get to half-time 0-0, making RB sweat on it a little bit, but soon after that they were able to take control. But in the meantime, Kobel was kept very busy in the nets for Stuttgart, making a number of good saves, actually, some outstanding saves really to keep them in the contest until Haidara came out and was able to play a nice 1-2 and have sorry, not play a 1-2. That was for one of his other chances, but for Haidara to basically score a really nice goal. And Forsberg came on as a sub and won himself a penalty, which he duly converted as well to take home the points. So yeah, they keep the title race alive for another weekend. Probably not something they envisaged would happen this weekend. I think they probably would have assumed that Bayern were going to win. So what are we? Yeah, obviously it's cut the gap a little bit now, but that's all that RB can do, really, isn't it? They've had enough opportunities throughout the season, and obviously it's on Bayern again next weekend coming. Well, actually, not next weekend coming, because we do have a break in play, so to speak, because of the DFB Pokal semi-finals, we think. So they've got a bit of time anyway to stew on that. But yeah, I think comfortable result and win for RB. They'll be pleased that they've kept it going a little bit longer, but you can't envisage that Bayern will make too many more errors with given how clinical they are, and they're so used to being in that position are Bayern. So yeah, it'll be interesting, because I've been saying this to you, Mark, haven't I, about the rumours that the deal for Konate to Liverpool seems like a signed deal. So that's their best 2 centre-halves gone for next season. So it might be a very different looking RB side that we look at in 2021-22 season. They'll have to make sure they build and sign players with cleverly, and don't overpay either. So yeah, they need to be careful. Certainly, they don't want to make too many steps backwards, because they've obviously been doing really well. So yeah, we'll have to watch how they go.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point that you make about the obviously Upamecano and now potentially Konate also going, because they've only conceded 25 goals in 31 games this year. So, I mean, yeah, again, is it a question of ambition, really? Obviously, Upamecano going to the big title rivals, and then, and then ironically, Konate going to the team that knocked them out of the Champions League as well. I mean, we've talked a lot about this before, me and Rory, about the fact that it's occasionally the Bundesliga teams do lack ambition, like aside from obviously Bayern. Is this another example? You know, we'll have to see what happens on the Dortmund front. Obviously, they've got a lot of players that are in big demand. Frankfurt also are going to have a lot of players, as are probably Gladbach. Yeah, I think maybe not so much Wolfsburg, because I think it's been more of a team effort from them. You know, I think. Well, obviously they have had standout players, but I mean they've got a bit more financial clout to kind of keep them together. Obviously, with Volkswagen kind of propping them up, so we'll have to see what happens there. Okay, another big game this weekend was obviously the Union 3, Werder Bremen 1. I mean, for me, this was a bit of a game of two halves, really. I think in the first half, while not being a very good spectacle, Werder Bremen did have a few chances in this game, all of which they passed up. But then the second half, it was all about that man, the Finn, POHJANPALO. Yeah, apologies to any Finnish people watching this, because my pronunciation of the name probably isn't too accurate. But yeah, anyway, I mean, it was the first goal obviously came from a corner, which was poorly dealt with. Okay, a little bit of luck really to fall perfectly for POHJANPALO to just tap it in. But then, Rory, I think the second two goals were really, really nice moves from Union Berlin.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the striker POHJANPALO is how I'm going to say it. But yeah, I think the second, obviously, you say they were good moves. I think the second goal was more of a kind of route one sort of goal. Actually, it's a long ball that starts the move, and it's just basically, I'm not sure if it gets flicked on, but certainly the Werder defender that's going for the ball doesn't really cover himself in glory, and it obviously the striker's just coming onto the ball, chasing the loose ball, and finishes really nicely. But both of his his last two goals were really nice finishes into both corners, far corners. So yeah, very clinical sort of finishes actually. So yeah, very impressive for Union in what I thought was a fairly comfortable performance. Werder obviously a bit. You know, they're in a bit of a mess right now. They're kind of relying on players here and there to have okay performances to drag them through and get the odd goal. But so someone like Rashica is playing okay for them at the moment, but that's not really enough when you're struggling. You need players to pull teams out of trouble, a bit like kind of what Bittencourt did for them last season. So that's obviously not really happening this season. You've got the likes of Sargent, who's had okay performances a little bit. The captain Gebri Selassie obviously scored again. He does get a few goals actually from playing as a defender, right back or right winger sometimes, I guess. So yes, at the moment they're just not doing enough. I really am now fearing for them. Union look great. I think they might obviously just miss out on the top six, but 7th or 8th is a fantastic achievement for them. So well done to them. They've been brilliant all season. The Werder, I think they're in absolute freefall now. And if you're looking at all the teams and you're looking at form, obviously momentum in football is a really important thing, isn't it? And confidence is also another important thing. So right now, Werder have got neither of those two things. And other teams around them do. Cologne do. Mainz do. Bielefeld, obviously, apart from, they got a bit of a tanking today, but have been picking up points on a regular basis. So they're one of the few teams that are really, really struggling at the moment, and they can't see where the next point is coming from. And when you've only got 3 more games to make sure that you're safe, it's looking a bit bleak at the moment, I have to say.
Yeah, really, not enough goals in the team, is there at all? Obviously, Bittencourt's been out for a while now. And I just think, if you look at their side, the central midfield is obviously Merwald and Eggestein. I quite rate them as players, actually. I think they're decent, solid. They're probably their best 2 players, the most consistent players. But, if you look up front, Rashica hasn't done enough for me this season at all. He's meant to be one of their few flair players. I quite like Osako early in the season as well, the Japanese international, but he seems to have fallen out of favour as well after a poor run of form. Obviously, they were hoping big things for the return of Nicholas Füllkrug as well, who missed a lot of long part of the season, but he's not come back in the same form, has he? So, it is, and Kohfeldt, the manager, obviously he's been under pressure for probably about 2 years now. Yeah. I think the fans are really running out of kind of patience with him, and to be honest, I would imagine he will get fired regardless of whether they stay up or not, in all honesty, because he's not. I mean, obviously 31 points last season, 30 points so far this season. So that's over a space of like, what, 2 seasons they've been averaging below a point a game. It's just not good enough really for a club like Werder Bremen. And I do think it's time probably now to get rid of Kohfeldt, regardless of whether they stay up or not, in all honesty. And I think obviously the club is lacking money, which is probably why they've kept the guy for so long. But I mean, we've seen it can happen with Köln sacking Gisdol, that it can work if you fire a manager. But obviously now it's too late. With 3 games to go, this is not the time for sacking managers. But I mean, yeah, long term, for me, he's not the man. I'm sorry, Kohfeldt, but you've got to be replaced for someone with a bit more nous and a bit more experience for me. Okay, so moving on, obviously the Sunday evening game, which ended in a 5-0 win for Gladbach over Bielefeld. So obviously we've talked a lot about how well the bottom teams have been doing the last 4 or 5 rounds of fixtures. Before this game, Bielefeld, they'd won 2 and drawn 2 of the last 4 games to go into a reasonable position, although they were only 1 point above that bottom 3 spot before kickoff, which might have been a bit disappointing after such a good run of form. But I mean, they were truly battered in this game, Rory. It just didn't go for them today, did it? Obviously 3-0 down after only 18 minutes as well.
Yeah, I think they just came up against a couple of informed players in the Gladbach side. Obviously, a couple of goals for Brian Bolo. Thuram was a constant pest in the sight of Bielefeld, and Plie came on as well to make an impact. So yeah, that kind of extra pace and a bit of penetration that Gladbach were able to utilise really hurt Bielefeld today. And the other thing is that Gladbach seems to be in quite a clinical mood as well. Some of their moves were quite sharp and precise. The finishes were good. Especially Plie's 5th. That was a really nice finish, actually, from kind of distance, shall we say. But curls it around perfectly. Obviously, Bielefeld have relied a lot on Ortega in net for a lot of the season. And as good as a keeper he is, he was helpless really today as well. So, obviously, an unfortunate handball as well for the 3rd goal. Just one of those things. Ben Sabini puts it, does the rest from the penalty spot. So yeah, a bad day at the office for Bielefeld, but they might not have really targeted this one as one that they necessarily need to get points from. Obviously, they need points all the time anyway, but they'll have other premonitions about other fixtures to come. Gladbach are making obviously a little bit of a late charge. Their aggregate of their last 2 games is 9-0 in their favour, having smashed Frankfurt as well. So they're looking really good. Is it a bit little too late? Obviously, with the fact that Leverkusen picked up an important result means they're 4 points off that 6th place. But obviously, all you can do is win your last 3 games and see where it gets you. So that's what Gladbach have to target ultimately, and they'll see where they end up. If they've got Plie, Thuram, and Mbolo on form, and Neuhaus, obviously a classy player, then they've got every chance. So yeah, we'll have to see.
Absolutely. Obviously, I think Bielefeld now 3 games left. I think the big fixture, what could be the big fixture of the season now, is obviously Hertha Berlin versus Bielefeld in the next round of fixtures as well. It's still 2 weeks from now, but I mean, that is beyond huge. I mean, I think, unfortunately, as things stand, despite Bielefeld's run, you probably still have them down as favourites for that second from bottom at the minute as a result of Cologne's run and their fixtures. Obviously, the problem is with Hertha, they have a lot of winnable games in those last 6. That's the thing. I think they still play Schalke, Bielefeld, Cologne. I think they still play. I mean, they've definitely got a lot of winnable games in there. So I think Bielefeld, they will need another win. I think another win, or maybe even 4 points, will guarantee them a relegation playoff place, I think. But they will definitely need more points on the board. The last 3 games, obviously, as I mentioned, away to Hertha, but then they play Hoffenheim at home, who are going to be slap bang mid-table, and then Stuttgart away on the last day. They're not bad games for me, because they're 2 teams that are going to have nothing to play for whatsoever in those games, and you can really get stuck into those kind of teams. So it's not over for Bielefeld by any chance. They've still got a great chance, but as a result of other teams' crazy form, I still think they're probably favourites for that second bottom, which it would be brutal if they went down a second bottom after the season they put together with the handicaps. obviously technically and financially. But they've done fantastically. I'd like to see them stay up personally, but I mean, it's been one of those seasons at the bottom, hasn't it? I mean, every team apart from Schalke has put a run together at some point, so they'll have to see. Okay, last game, not much to say about this one. It was a mid-table battle, really, between Freiburg and Hoffenheim. I think Hoffenheim will be asking themselves how the hell they didn't win this game, to be honest. I thought Bebu was excellent in the game. Kramaric getting his 17th goal of the season in a team that haven't really fired for the most part. So he remains a valuable striker. Obviously, Grifo netting with the penalty, which looked a little bit soft to me, to be honest with you. I don't know what you thought about that, Rory. It was a strange one, wasn't it?
Yeah, maybe on the soft side, I would say. Just one of those ones, I guess. Pretty unfortunate. Grifo won't matter. He won't care at all, will he? Ends his 12-game wait for a goal, actually, considering all I can remember saying whilst Freiburg were on their hot form earlier on the season is Grifo. He was superb, so it's good to see him back on the score sheet. But yeah, mid-table clash. Hoffenheim were probably the better side. Bebu, like you said, looked impressive. Kramaric obviously benefiting from Bebu's assist. So point apiece, happy days. Been decent seasons for both. Obviously, I'd say Freiburg have put together a better one though so far. Yeah,
without it. I think Freiburg, they still want to get that top half finish because that's a big kind of. They got a top half finish last year as well. So, I mean, this could be back-to-back top half finishes, which is very impressive when you consider their financial implications, their financial constraints, so to speak. Okay, so that pretty much ends the review. So let's just finish with obviously the hero and zero this week. So, Rory, do you want to introduce the zero this week?
Yeah, I'll do the zero. It gets me off the having to pronounce our hero.
Yeah, so exactly.
Do that. The zero was a tricky one this weekend. Wasn't anything too malicious or bone idle that happened. So just by process of elimination, we've had to go with Jude Bellingham. Just by the fact that a couple of silly yellow cards in a big game could have potentially cost his side, especially with half an hour to go in such a big game. But young lads, he'll learn from it. So, just for this week, Bellingham's the zero of the week.
Yeah, and I think obviously there were a lot of great performances. I've got to say, Andre Duda was very, very unlucky to miss out. I think obviously Haaland was also unlucky to miss out. But I think, considering it was his first Bundesliga hat-trick, it's got to be Joel POHJANPALO. Yeah, okay, it's a bit easier when you've got the kind of text to read, but yeah, it's not an easy one. Obviously, getting a hat trick for Union Berlin, he could have had another couple of goals. Actually, to be honest, he almost got a 9-minute hat trick. Actually, he missed a bit of a sitter, which would have given him a famous 9-minute hat trick. But he got his hat trick in the end. Excellent performance from this very consistent and impressive Union Berlin outfit. So so that pretty much brings an end to this interesting week 31 review. So let's have a look at just close the show by looking at the Twitter feed, which is @OverTheBarFB. Check out everything Bundesliga and football related on there. Then obviously we got otbfootball.net, which is a centerpiece of our work. Yeah, so check all that stuff out. So obviously next week it will be a break. It's the Pokal semi-finals, which of course is Dortmund versus Holstein Kiel and Leipzig versus Werder Bremen. Then we'll be back again in the second weekend of March, which will be the 9th of May. Sorry, I'm losing track of time now. It's still lockdown here, so
yeah.
But we'll be back then. So see you in 2 weeks, guys.
Cheers all.